The market was loud, dirty, and full of alien smells. Traders shouted over each other, showing off cages full of rare species and strange machines. But one cage was different. It didn't have a powerful beast or shiny tech. It had a girl. She was on her knees, barely awake, covered in mud. Her skin was bruised and scratched. Her clothes were ripped and soaked in dirty water. Long strands of wet, tangled hair stuck to her face, and her pointed ears showed she wasn't human. The crowd avoided her cage. Some aliens laughed, others made jokes. "She's useless." One said, "She stinks." Another whispered, "No one will buy that," said the auctioneer with a grin. Even the guards stood far from her, as if touching her was dangerous. But one man didn't walk past, a human, tall, quiet, and alone stopped in front of her. Cage, his name was Commander Jace Rowan, a cargo pilot and ex-Marine. He had seen many things in the galaxy wars, monsters, and machines, but never had he seen someone so dirty. Yet so alive inside. Her eyes were open just a little. They were glowing a faint purple, filled with pain. And something else. Fear. Maybe. Or hope. Name. Jace asked the auctioneer. The fat alien snorted. No name. She's mute. Was found in a crashed pod near Sector 7. Nobody knows what she is. And frankly, no one cares. Jace looked back at her. She didn't move. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. She just stared at the muddy floor, shivering slightly. "How much?" Jace asked again. The auctioneer laughed. "You want her. 1 credit." Just to get her off my list, Jace dropped the coin without a word. The auctioneer blinked, white here, serious. Jace didn't answer. He opened the cage door himself. The girl flinched and tried to crawl back into the corner. Jace didn't force her. He just removed his jacket and dropped it beside her. "Come," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you." It took several minutes, but finally she reached out one shaking hand and touched the jacket. The trip back to his ship was silent. She didn't speak. She didn't even try to escape. She just sat there in the corner of the small passenger cabin, dirty and cold. When they landed, Jace led her to the small shower room. It wasn't fancy, but it had hot water, clean towels, and soap. "I'll wait outside," he said. Placing clothes and water on a bench, "You can lock the door." "Take your time." She looked at him, confused, as if waiting for him to laugh or to attack. But he didn't. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in who knows how long, she was alone, truly alone, and safe. The sound of running water filled the hallway. Jace sat by the door, arms crossed, eyes watching the dark walls. He didn't know who she was, or what trouble she might bring. But something deep inside him said she didn't deserve the way they treated her. After 30 minutes, the door opened slowly. She stood there in his oversized shirt, towel wrapped around her damp hair. She was clean now, and under the dirt and mud, she was beautiful. But her eyes still looked like she was waiting to be hurt. Jace didn't move. He just nodded. "Hungry?" She nodded slowly, still no words. He led her to the kitchen, gave her soup and warm bread. She ate slowly, like she was afraid it might be taken away. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand answers. That night, she curled up on the couch, watching him from the corner of her eye, and before falling asleep, she whispered something so soft he almost didn't hear it. "Thank you." Jace never planned to bring anyone aboard his ship, especially not a silent alien girl covered in bruises and fear. But now, here she was, sleeping on his couch like a lost kitten, wrapped in a blanket, her breathing soft, her body still tense, like she didn't believe this peace would last. Jace watched her from the pilot chair as the ship drifted through space. He still didn't know what species she belonged to. She had the ears of an elf, the skin of a starlight hybrid, and those strange purple eyes. But one thing was clear, she was smart. And she had been hurt badly. He got up quietly, walked to the storage bay, and checked the registry. Technically, she wasn't on any list. No ID, no name, no record. She was a non-registered biological life form, which meant one thing. No one was looking for her. Or, maybe, someone very dangerous was. The next morning, Jace made breakfast eggs, protein cakes, and juice. He placed the plate near her and sat across the room. She woke slowly, blinking at the food, then at him. She didn't smile, but she nodded like a quiet thank you. She picked up the fork with shaky fingers and started eating slowly. Jace spoke gently. "I'm Jace," he said. "You've got a name." She looked at him for a moment, then shook her head. Or maybe she didn't remember. "That's okay," Jace said with a calm voice. "You don't have to talk, just rest. You're safe here." Later that day, he gave her a notebook and pen. "Draw. Write whatever you want." She stared at it for a long time, unsure what to do. Then she began drawing simple shapes at first, then stars, planets, and a broken spaceship. Jace recognized it immediately. "Is that where you came from?" he asked, pointing at the drawing. She looked up, eyes wide, and nodded slowly. That wreck, he'd heard about it on the comms, a research ship that crashed weeks ago. On a mining world, no survivors, they said. But she was one of them, wasn't she? That meant someone lied, or someone wanted it kept quiet. Jace knew he had to be careful, but he also knew one thing: she needed him. He began fixing a small guest room for her: fresh sheets, clean water, and basic comforts. When she saw it, she just stared for a long time, then walked in slowly and sat on the bed like she didn't trust it. But she stayed. Over the next few days, she didn't speak. But she watched everything: how he flew the ship, how he cooked, how he repaired the engines. She was learning, absorbing it all. Sometimes she helped without asking, bringing him tools, pointing at panels. She was intelligent, and maybe trained. One night, while they were both in the kitchen, she touched his arm gently, then pointed at herself and whispered, "Riva." Jace blinked, surprised. "Riva? Is that your name?" She nodded, slowly, like it took all her courage to say it. He smiled softly. "Nice to meet you, Riva." Her lips twitched just a little, almost a smile, but peace didn't last long. The next morning, Jace got an alert on the system, an old bounty code. Blinking red, he opened it and frowned. Someone had issued a bounty for biological retrieval, live or dead. The target image loaded, and it was her. Riva. His heart sank. The reward was too high for a normal runaway, which meant she was important or dangerous. She walked into the room just as he shut the alert. He looked at her and spoke calmly. "Riva, someone's looking for you." She froze, panic returning to her eyes. She backed up like she wanted to run, but Jace stood and raised a hand gently. "I'm not turning you in," he said firmly. "You're safe here. I promise." She looked at him, eyes shaking. Then, slowly, she nodded, but deep inside, Jace knew things were about to get a lot more dangerous. Whatever Riva was hiding, it wouldn't stay hidden for long. And Jace, he'd already made his choice. He bought her for the price of scrap, but to him, she was worth saving. Riva stood quietly near the viewing window of the ship, watching the stars pass like streaks of light. She still didn't speak much. But her eyes were different now, no longer dull and broken. There was a quiet light in them, like she had started to believe she wasn't trash anymore. Jace watched her from the control panel. Arms crossed, he had seen soldiers break, seen people lose everything, but he had never seen someone so badly treated. Still standing, her body had healed quickly, faster than any normal alien species he knew. The bruises were fading, the cuts had sealed, and now, without the dirt and pain, she didn't look weak at all. She looked strong. Riva had soft silver skin, glowing faintly in the dark. Her long white hair had dried into smooth strands, and those purple eyes, glowing like twin moons. She wasn't just beautiful, she was something rare, maybe even royal. But she still flinched at loud noises. She still tensed when someone moved too fast. Whatever happened to her before left deep scars. Jace had taken her to a quiet space station for supplies. He told her to stay hidden in the ship, just in case. She sat on the edge of the bed, silent, fingers clenched. Before he left, she whispered, "You'll come back." He stopped at the door, surprised. It was the first time she had spoken more than one word. "I promise," he said. And then he left. When he returned an hour later, she was sitting by the door, waiting, just waiting, like a child afraid of being forgotten. He handed her a small bag of food. She smiled, really smiled for the first time. Over the next few days, Jace taught her how to use the ship's basic tools. She followed his instructions closely, eyes sharp and fast. She didn't just learn, she remembered. It was like she'd done this before. One evening, while working on a broken panel, she picked up a microwelder, flipped it in her hand, and fixed the circuit faster than he could. "You've done this before," he said. Watching her, she looked up, paused, then gave a small nod. "Engineering?" he asked. She hesitated, then traced a symbol on the table, a star and a spiral. It was the mark of the Solari Empire, a powerful alien alliance that vanished years ago. Jace stared. If she was Solari, then she wasn't just a survivor. She was a mystery worth billions. That night, Jace sat alone in the cockpit, thinking. If others found out who Riva was, they'd come for her. Not to help her, or kill her. She was safer with him, but how long could he protect her alone? Suddenly, soft footsteps behind him. Riva stood at the doorway, wearing one of his old flight jackets, sleeves too long for her. She walked in and handed him a small metal chip. He looked at it, confused. "What's this?" She pointed at the control screen. "Data. Ship logs," she whispered, then added, "My ship." Jace plugged it into the console and watched as data streamed across. Coordinates, passenger lists, power readings. The Solari ship she came from wasn't just a transport, it was a science vessel. And Riva, she was listed not as crew, but as lead scientist. He stared at her in shock. "You were in charge?" She nodded slowly. "We were testing jump tech. Something went wrong." Explosion. Her voice was shaky but clear. "Everyone died. I survived. Landed alone." Jace's jaw tightened. So she wasn't just a victim. She was a genius, a leader, and probably the only one left of her kind. "I don't care what you were," Jace said after a pause. "I don't care about titles, power, or alien empires." He looked her in the eyes. "I just care that you're safe." Riva's lips trembled. She had heard many lies in her life, but his words felt different, solid, like he meant every one of them. Later that night, she sat by the window again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Jace brought 2 mugs of warm drink and sat beside her. They watched the stars together in silence. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder, and for the first time since he found her, she wasn't shaking. Riva woke suddenly in the middle of the night. Her heart was pounding. Her skin was cold. With sweat, her eyes darted around the room. No cages, no chains, no guards, just soft light, warm blankets, and silence. But in her dream, she had been back there, back in that dark pit where the others had dragged her, where hands had hurt her, where voices had shouted, "You're not worth anything." They said, "She's broken." They laughed, "She's just trash." She sat up, breathing hard, trying not to cry, trying to remind herself this place was different. The human Jace hadn't hurt her. Not once, but deep down, a voice whispered, "What if he changes? What if he's just like them?" In the cockpit, Jace was still awake, watching the stars. He turned when he heard the soft footsteps behind him. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. Riva didn't answer. She stood by the doorway, her eyes low, her hands were shaking. He stood slowly, careful not to scare her. "You're safe here," he said, "as always, but this time." Her voice broke through the silence. "Why?" Jace paused. "Why? What?" Her hands clenched. "Why are you kind? What do you want from me?" The words hit him like a sharp blade. He realized then she didn't trust him. Not fully, not yet. He stepped closer, slow and calm. "I don't want anything from you, Riva," he said. "I didn't save you to use you, but others did," she whispered. First, they smiled. Then they lied. Then they took everything. Her voice was shaking now. Tears filled her glowing purple eyes. "I thought you would too," she said. "I was waiting." For the moment you change, Jace felt his chest tighten. He hated what had been done to her. He hated that kindness was something she had to fear. He walked past her and opened a small panel on the wall. Inside was a drawer with a weapon, his old marine blaster. He placed it gently on the table, then stepped away. Riva stared at it, confused. "You think I will use that?" Jace nodded. "If you ever feel unsafe with me, if I ever act like the others, you don't need to run." He looked her in the eyes. "You fight. You protect yourself. I won't stop you." Riva stared at the weapon, then at him. There was no lie in his voice, no hidden threat, no trick. She walked slowly to the table and picked it up. It was heavy, strong, and warm in her hands. A human weapon, a symbol of power, of control. But instead of aiming it, she placed it gently back on the table. "I don't want to fight you," she whispered. Jace smiled a little. "And I don't want to fight you either." The next morning, something had changed. Riva walked through the ship more freely. She even helped Jace with daily tasks. She began speaking more, short words, at first tool. "Food, thank you." But each word was stronger than the last. She started laughing quietly at his bad jokes. She pointed out mistakes in the engine room. She even corrected his flight path once. "You're drifting off course," she said calmly. Jace raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" She just smiled and nodded. She was right, of course. She wasn't just remembering who she was. She was becoming someone new, stronger, freer, a survivor, not a victim. But trouble was never far. One day, while scanning a nearby space station for supplies, a transmission came in coded and fast. Jace answered, but no one spoke. Instead, a message flashed across the screen. "She is ours. Surrender her, and we won't destroy you." Riva saw it too. She froze, hands gripping the console. "Who are they?" Jace asked. She didn't answer right away, then finally said, "The ones who took my crew. The ones who called me an experiment." Jace's fists clenched. "They won't get you again." Riva looked at him, unsure. "They always find me." But Jace shook his head. "Not this time. Not while I'm still breathing." The message was short, but it shook the entire ship. "She is ours. Surrender her, and we won't destroy you." The words flashed on the main screen in red, and then vanished. Jace stood still for a moment, staring at the no-black monitor. His jaw clenched, his mind racing. This wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. Someone out there had tracked Riva, and they weren't asking politely. Riva sat on the floor near the control panel, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, her purple eyes were wide with fear. She had known this day would come. She just didn't expect it so soon. "Do you know who they are?" Jace asked softly. She nodded slowly. Black core. Jace's face darkened. He had heard of the Man Outlaw Research Group, known for stealing alien tech and running illegal experiments. They operated in deep space, far from any law, ruthless, cold, hidden. If Riva had escaped from them, she wasn't just a victim, she was evidence, They'll chase you across the galaxy, he said, thinking aloud. They can't risk anyone knowing what they did to you, Riva whispered. They already erased my crew, my records. Everything. She looked up at him, her voice shaking. They won't stop. If you keep me here, they'll kill you too. Jace looked at her, long and hard. Then leaned down and said in a firm voice, let them try. He moved quickly. Locking down the ship's firewalls, he boosted shields and changed their call sign. Then he activated a stealth protocol, an old trick from his Marine days. It would hide their heat signature for 72 hours. After that, they'd have to move. Fast Riva followed him from room to room, her silence heavy, but her eyes focused. She was scared, but she wasn't running. Not this time. Jace stopped in the armory and opened a hidden compartment. Inside were 2 suits, old Marine armor. Lightweight, but strong. He tossed one toward her. You're not a prisoner anymore, he said. You're part of this ship. And we protect each other here. She looked at the suit like it was made of fire, then slowly took it in her hands. It was heavier than it looked. She hadn't worn armor since before the crash, before her whole life fell apart. Hours passed, and the ship drifted silently in the shadow of a dead moon. Jace and Riva sat in the dark, speaking softly. She told him more about the Solari research project, how they were developing a new jump engine, how they discovered something powerful, something the Black Core wanted, how her team disappeared, one by one, and how she escaped. Barely. I saw my captain melt, she whispered, her voice cracking. They used a weapon that ... eats the body, molecule by molecule. She shook her head, and then they locked me in a cage. Jace didn't speak. He just handed her a cup of warm tea and sat beside her. You're not in a cage anymore, he said. You're here. With me, but peace didn't last. An alarm beeped soft. At first, then louder. Unidentified vessel approaching. Stealth mode detected. ATA, 45 minutes. Jace stood fast, heading for the cockpit. They found us. Riva followed quickly, her armor only half secured. But how? They must have planted a tracer when we landed last. He said, doesn't matter now. We have to move. He started the engines, but the console blinked red. Engine lockdown detected, external override signal active. They're jamming our controls. Jace growled, they're coming to take you back. Riva froze, staring at the flashing screen. She could almost hear the voice of the scientist from Black Core. Run all you want, little mouse. We always catch our test subjects. She looked at Jace's hands flying over the controls, trying to break the lock. He had saved her when no one else would. He gave her warmth, a name, and safety. And now, he might die because of her. No, she said suddenly. She stepped forward and touched the console. Her fingers moved fast, tapping code he didn't recognize. A screen unlocked. She pressed her palm to a panel, and the ship hummed with life again. Jump drive online, the system said. Jace looked at her, stunned. How did you? I designed it, she said with a small smile. Back before I was a prisoner. Jace didn't waste a second. He activated the jump. The stars stretched, the ship shook, and in a flash, they were gone. When they reappeared, deep in uncharted space. The silence was thick. Jace leaned back in the chair, breathing hard. Riva sat beside him, her head resting. On her knees? You saved me, he said quietly. No, she whispered. We saved each other after the jump. The ship floated in the quiet emptiness of deep space. There were no stars close by. No planets, no signals, just silence. And safety for now. Riva sat near the engine room, her arms wrapped around her knees. She had helped them escape, but her mind was still full of fear. She had run for so long now. For the first time, she had stopped, and she didn't know what to do. Jace walked in slowly, holding 2 mugs of hot tea. He handed one to her and sat down beside her. "You saved both of us," he said. She gave a weak smile, but her hands still trembled. "I only knew the code," she said softly. "I didn't save anyone. You did that when you took me from the cage." Jace looked at her carefully. "No, Riva, you survived. You escaped. You didn't give up. That's strength." "Real strength?" She didn't answer, but his words stayed in her heart, somewhere deep inside. They lit a small fire. The next few days were quiet. Jace used the time to repair parts of the ship. Riva stayed close, watching, helping, learning. He began teaching her more advanced systems engine flow, shield power routing, emergency protocols. She learned quickly, sometimes faster than him. She wasn't just smart, she was gifted. "Have you ever flown a ship?" he asked one morning. Riva looked surprised, then shook her head. "No. I always stayed in the lab. I wasn't allowed to leave." Jace stood and gestured toward the pilot's seat. "Well, now you can." Riva blinked. "You? Trust me with the controls." Jace nodded. "You've earned that and more." The first time she touched the steering handles, her fingers shook, but slowly, under Jace's calm voice, she began to guide the ship. The stars outside moved gently. The ship turned smoothly. She smiled. Small at first, then brighter. "I did it," she whispered. Almost like a child seeing stars for the first time. "You did," Jace said with pride. Later that night, Jace was in the training room, punching a bag, old habits from his marine life. Riva peeked in from the doorway. Curious, he noticed and waved her in. "Want to learn?" he asked, holding out gloves. She hesitated. "I was never trained to fight," she said. "They always said I wasn't strong enough." "Well, I don't care what they said." Jace replied, "Let's change that." They started slow basic footwork, blocks, balance. Riva stumbled a few times but kept trying. Jace never shouted, never judged. He guided her step by step, his voice calm and steady. "You don't have to be big to fight," he said. "You just need to know when to move." Day by day, Riva grew more confident. Her steps became faster, her hits sharper. She began smiling more, laughing sometimes when she messed up, and each time she stood tall after falling. Jace saw something powerful in her eyes fire. One evening, after a long session, Riva sat on the floor, sweating and tired. Jace handed her a towel and a bottle of water. "You're getting stronger," he said. She looked at him and nodded. "I feel it." "Like I'm becoming someone new." "You're becoming you," he said. The version they tried to hide, her voice grew quiet. "Do you think I'll ever be normal?" Jace paused. "No," he said honestly, "but you'll be more than that. You'll be someone free. Okay, someone real." Her eyes softened. No one had ever said that to her before, not even her old team. She felt something warm grow in her chest, something like hope, that night. She stood in front of the mirror in her room. She touched her face, clean and healed, her arms once covered in bruises, now held muscle and control. She looked strong, but more than that, she looked alive. She wasn't just the dirty alien girl in a cage anymore. She wasn't just a number, a lab tool, or a forgotten life. She was Riva. The next morning, the ship's scanner beeped. An unknown signal, weak but close. Jace and Riva looked at each other. "It's not black core," he said. Reading the screen, "looks like a distress beacon." Riva stood beside him. "What do we do?" Jace glanced at her, then smiled. "We help." She nodded, and for the first time, she didn't feel like a burden. She felt like a part of the team. Like a warrior, ready to protect others, just like someone once did for her. The beacon was weak, but real. A broken signal repeated over and over. "Mayday, engine failure. Need assistance." Jace checked the coordinates only a few hours away. "Could be a trap," he muttered. Riva stood beside him, calm. but alert. Or someone like me, she said quietly. They both remembered what it felt like to be ignored, abandoned, left in the dark. Jace gave a small nod. We go. They arrived at a damaged civilian transport, spinning slowly in deep space. No power, no shields, inside. A small crew of mixed-species aliens huddled in the dark. One young girl, a reptilian hybrid, was crying softly. They hadn't eaten in days. Their power core had exploded, and no one answered their calls. Until now, Jace and Riva worked together. Jace repaired their power lines while Riva calmed the passengers. She handed out food packs, blankets, and soft words. The crew stared at her, unsure. She was wearing armor, standing tall and silent. But she wasn't cold, she wasn't cruel. She was kind, gentle even. One older alien whispered to Jace, "She used to be a slave, didn't she?" Jace didn't answer right away. He just looked across the room at Riva, who was kneeling beside this scared child. "Maybe," he said softly. "But now she's something greater." When the passengers were safe and warm, Riva stood in the ship's hallway. Her reflection in the cracked metal panel looked back at her. She remembered how she once looked filthy, broken, forgotten, covered in mud, locked in a cage. Afraid of every sound, but not anymore. Now her armor shined under the ship's soft lights. Her hands no longer shook, and her voice, though quiet, was strong. She didn't know if she would ever return to her people, if they were even still alive. But she knew one thing. She would never go back to being what she was. Not while she still had breath in her body. Later, Jace found her sitting in the pilot seat. Watching the stars again, he sat beside her, holding 2 mugs of warm tea. She took one and smiled softly. "You're different now," he said, "stronger." Free Riva looked down at her hands. "I feel new," she said, "like the old version of me died on that slave world." Jace nodded. Maybe she did, but this version, it's alive. And she saved lives today. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of the ship. Then Riva said something that surprised him. "I want to help others like me," she said. "I don't want anyone else to feel what I felt. To be forgotten like that." Jace looked at her and smiled. "Then let's do it together." Over the next weeks, their mission changed. They didn't just fly from station to station anymore. They started listening to the hidden signals, the weak voices of those trapped in cages, the lost, the hunted, the discarded. And each time Riva answered, word spread in quiet places. There was a ship that helped the forgotten, a human captain, and an alien woman with silver skin and purple eyes. No one knew her real name. Some called her Ghost Star. Others called her the Queen of the Lost. But for those she saved, she was more than a name. She was hope. One day, while checking a cargo bay on a neutral moon, a merchant stopped Jace. He whispered, "Is it true that she was once a slave?" Jace turned. Eyes calm, voice steady. "She was," he said. "And now she's the reason we're all still breathing back on the ship." Riva stood in the garden room, a small space Jace built for her. She touched the glass, watching the small plants grow in artificial light, a reminder of life, of growth. Jace walked in and stood beside her. "We've come far," he said. Riva nodded. "And we're not done." "No," he agreed. "Not by a long shot." She turned and looked at him, her voice soft but sure. "Thank you for seeing me." Jace gave a slow smile. "I didn't see a slave, Riva," he said. "I saw someone the universe tried to break and failed." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer and gently rested her forehead against his, not out of fear, not out of need, but out of trust. And in that moment, the broken girl from the slave market was gone. In her place stood a survivor, a protector, a queen.